Well, thank you, Surya. I had a couple of comments, but not at this stage. I think I'll come later. You want to quickly respond to them before we open to the House?
Okay.
Very quickly.
I think the comments made by both the experts are valid, and um, actually I didn't get much time to cover all these issues, which makes the topic like this. Very briefly commenting on India-China competition in the Indian Ocean. Yes, there is competition in short, and there are obvious reasons for that. Both countries are having huge populations. They are going out and looking for resources to sustain their economic growth, and that's why there is competition, and it will happen, continue. And now much focus is that being turned towards Indian Ocean is because of that. So I agree completely on that. About India-US relations, from US analysts, they see India as a balancer. In India, there are difference of opinion, but I agree, and I am closer to the view that India is strengthening its partnership with US to balance China. But simultaneously, it's not only improving its relationship with the US, but other countries as well, and including Japan and now Australia and all other. In fact, if we recall this tsunami incident, at that time, the cooperation was that community of democracy, or China was left out, and India, US, Australia, and Japan worked together in relief and rescue operation during tsunami. That was termed tsunami diplomacy. So it's a kind of sending a signal to China that it's important, this region is important for all countries, and we are working together, so putting pressure also on China. ASEAN perspective is changing, of course, and change of approach in Philippines and Vietnam, and India's increasing recognition and importance in the region is important, and that is being reflected in India-ASEAN, that Delhi dialogue process, which they are doing at 1.5 track dialogue, but it needs further research and a lot of material. About your comments, I'll begin very quickly on India's South Asia policy, which you made the last. That India is not comfortable with engaging external powers in South Asia. That's changing, and the best case is Nepal, where India is working together with external powers to bring peace and democracy. People say Kashmir, but it's entirely bilateral, and there are no international interests like South China Sea, where it's international sea and various countries' interests are involved. That's not the case with Kashmir. So both are completely different issues. India was quite hesitant in involving external powers in the region, but it's changing because India has to accept the reality in global change of globalization. And, so it's changing, but it may take time. Other comments, it's very tough questions to answer. Should India play a major power role or regional role? It's all related to its capability. India is improving its naval capability, but it all depends on economic resources and political will as well. And we have in the coalition politics, it's not easy to take strong decisions, and till recently or even now, I mean, Indian Navy is getting less fund than Indian Army, so focus was more continental and not oceanic. So I think it will take time, and probably at the moment I'm not able to answer this question. About Chinese intervention and what will be what should be India's approach, that's again, I think I need more research on that what should be. It's still evolving, and India is discussing this, and there are different views. Experts who are serving and who are retired from even defense forces, they have different opinions. So still, this is evolving in the process.
Thank you. Now we open it to all of you. We probably take questions in batches if there are many. 2, 3. Yes, go ahead. Yes, you. Yeah.
Well, first is disclaimer, I'm no maritime strategy expert. So, I mean, these are questions that just crop up as we read more or less everyday news, little bit of study that I have to do while teaching. So, I mean, the first thing, a little about the clarification, you know, I had read an article which came out in 2012, I don't remember the references, but which said that the ONGC Videsh oil cartel and their experiments with that, I mean, it has actually withdrawn from one of the recent agreements about the oil cartel. I'm just wondering if it has anything to do in relation to the opposition of China on that. If yes, I mean, what kind of message then it does send to the others who want India's involvement in the South China Sea? This is one question. The other, you talked about, about an argument coming about in China's involvement in South Asia, and it's a kind of complementing India's involvement in South China Sea would be kind of repercussion or complementing or whatever, however you want to see it. I mean, if we look at the string of pearls, if we look at those points there, we can, I think, one observation can be made is they are very closely related to, if a map can be drawn about the string of pearls, it is very closely related to the oil lanes, the sea lanes that China is very, very interested in. And the sea lanes of China, that oil lanes that supply oil to China from Middle East and the other part of the world to China through Indian Ocean. I mean, do we have any kind of strategic interest in that manner in the South China Sea from Indian perspective? And are we only looking at the oil cartels of Vietnam? And if yes, then how? I mean, is India thinking of, helping out in other port facilities, building up of port facilities around, or, how would you then relate it to the argument of the string of pearls? So yeah, this is another one. And the third question I have on India-ASEAN relations. If ASEAN is interested in involving India in South China Sea, I mean, why would it be interested? Because they have already to deal with China. I mean, is it only kind of creating a balance with China? Or is it not again inviting, another big trouble with India might have its own interests, which might cause impediments to individual nation states? So, thank you.
Anyone else? Nobody. Okay. You? Okay. Go ahead.
Well, if I may just take advantage of my position with Mike.
Yeah.
Dr. Singh mentioned that America's involvement in the crisis in the South China Sea. And what I'm just curious to know is how the Indian government, the Indian military views the American involvement in the South China Sea. Does it see it as a negative development that threatens to escalate the crisis, or the opposite, a positive development that's part and parcel of the process that includes negotiations between ASEAN and China and India's military exercises with, you mentioned Japan and South Korea.
One more? Okay.
Thank you, Doctor. My question would be, do you think that India's South China Sea policy is trying to find a bargaining chip so that they can gain more advantage in the future negotiations with India on other issues, or India really has national interest there, like the oil, gas, or something? Thank you.
Okay.
First, the issue of OVL withdrawn. It came into news early last year, but it has not withdrawn from there. Vietnam, it was because, you mentioned that, was it because of Chinese pressure? The answer is no. Their contract was ending the exploration rights, and they didn't find anything. By that time, yeah. So, but Vietnam government extended their contract, and they are working on exploration, so they have not withdrawn. And that investment and exploration is not working under pressure of China or with support of China. It's completely India-Vietnam relations, which is working for quite some time, 1988 onwards. About China's South Asia engagement and a string of pearls, it's a issue of interpretation. First, my opinion, I don't subscribe the string of pearls strategy. If you see from Chinese perspective, the western part of China is, it gets its opening towards sea from that part, Pakistan. So when they're building port in Gwadar, it provides connectivity to entire western part of China, which opens a lot of trade opportunities and all. But does it mean that it's just only for trade or commerce? No. You can't bifurcate that this is for trade, this is for military purpose. All works together. And if you analyze the history of transportation, earlier roads were built for military purposes, which is now changing. Now India, ASEAN, and all different regions, sub-regions are talking about connectivity. But the same route is now, they are talking about connectivity, trade, and improving people-to-people ties, but that can be used for military purposes as well. So in that sense, the government, Indian government view is that it's natural for China to improve its relationship with South Asian countries. There are different opinion, people who, strategic experts or people who write in newspaper, they think that it's a strategic encirclement of India or a string of pearls, but only few and limited people. To a large extent, it's natural in international relation, and Chinese relationship with all South Asian countries are normal process of international relations. There are concerns in India because of different other different reasons. For example, China-Pakistan nuclear cooperation or similar issues. But making a port, Indian government official position is that India is not worried about that. It could be a potential threat, but right now India is not worried. So about India-ASEAN relationship, it's improving. India started its lookist policy in early 90s. The reason was that India was struggling to improve its economic condition. And now people write about different phases of lookist policy, phase 1, phase 2, and now some people are talking about phase 3 as well. So it started with economic relationship, but gradually when India's economic capability improved and it's sustaining a good economic growth, its requirement to protect those economic interests, it started a strategic and defense cooperation as well. Right? So it's improving day by day, and it's not directed against China. It's not because China is making relationship with ASEAN. It is interpreted that Chinese influence is increasing in South Asia. That's why India's influence is increasing. That's how you interpret different in theoretical aspects and all. But it's natural course of international relations that you have huge population and your requirements is increasing. So you need to look out and improve your relationship in different directions. And at the moment, India is improving its relationship not only with towards its east, but west as well. You can see the improvement of India's relationship with United States, with Europe. So it can't be said that it's tit for tat sort of policy that in China, South Asia, and India-ASEAN relationship. At least
Sorry, I think I didn't get it right across to you. I am not talking about India-ASEAN relationship on the whole, but why would ASEAN be interested in India coming and interfering in Southeast Asia, South China Sea, only this region? So that was my concern, not the entire thing. I mean, there's a different story in India-ASEAN relations.
Well, that's for obvious reasons that if you are heavily dependent on a particular country, you need to diversify your interest, and ASEAN countries see India as a big market. They also see India as a good friend. There were historical ties, there were trade relationship as well. So that also pulls together, and their interests are merging with each other. They have complementary interests that helps them improving their ties. It's not just China factor which is pulling them together. There are a lot of other issues on which they are working together. So it's not just balancing act. That could be one explanation, but that's not sufficient to explain that. About US involvement in South China Sea, India's government view, I'm not the right person to answer that what is India's government position. But in general, the reading is that India and US both are democratic countries, and their, in addition to other sectors, their defense ties are also improving. They are doing joint military exercises, which is to improve their interoperability, which is very important factor. So it's I don't think that it's negative, and it won't increase the conflict. But about government view, I'm not sure. That's what India's government position is about this issue. And the last question was about India strengthening or outlining its policy towards South China Sea as a bargaining chip. I think it's not bargaining chip against China. It's all, as I outlined in my presentation, that India's interest is heavily dependent to protect its trade, and the land routes are very limited by which India can do trade. So it's more on due to national interest and to protect its national security. India is engaging and outlining its policy and working towards that.
Anyone else?
Thank you. It's a very interesting presentation, and I'm glad that we met up finally. We've done some correspondence in the past through Professor David Malone, and I was very pleased with the content of what you've said today very succinctly. One or two very quick points. One is when you make a presentation like that, the audience would also expect you to back up your statements with actual capabilities on the part of the principal actors, in this case India. I mean, does India, within the 18-20% of the budget, what kind of capabilities India has created in order to back up its policy, the 3 carrier battle groups, etc., the number of submarines, the kind of procurements, hardware. People would expect you to speak a little on to those. Secondly, you cite for major policy people like Joshi and Arun Prakash, who are officers of the Navy. Now, people would expect you to back Indian policy statements up with statements by much higher political figures, because in a system that takes pride in a civilian control of the military, you'd want to hear what the Prime Minister or what A.K. Antony would have said on issues like this. One would have liked to also a little bit of analysis of the Chinese capabilities, particularly the Dongfang and missile capabilities. But I don't think you would have had the time, and nor is it part of this pitch. Otherwise, I think it's been very good, and I want to commend you on this and compliment you. Very happy to have you with us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, you want to react to him?
I think I agree with your comments, and I wanted to add this capability factor, but because of time constraint and I was also like tied up with so many things earlier, so I couldn't add that. But certainly, if I get chance to revise and produce a paper, I will add that factor into it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of
About-
interest on Indian procurement
Yeah.
now.
Very briefly about India's capability. India is improving, and in by 2022, I think India will have aircraft carrier, 4 aircraft carriers, and then submarine fleet will also increase substantially because Indian government is working on that. But at the moment, I am not able to give you correct figures and all. But I will factor that. I agree completely with that.
Well, that brings us to the end of this interesting debate. Let me say a couple of things. Why this question of India in South China Sea came up at all? As I mentioned to you, India has very, very long relations with Vietnam and Indochina countries. The issue came up only very recently, and that too after 2 or 3 developments had taken place. One development was China's that 9-dot line, which they said, and a kind of a unique territorial nationalism, that this is what they want and they would not allow any other country to do that. This was one issue which has rattled almost the entire region in one way or the other. The second issue was the US pivot in Asia Pacific, and I think the two combined together. And one made the region a bit panicky, and the other made China a bit panicky. That why is the US doing what it's doing? In fact, they are both very exaggerated notions of it. India got caught because it had an oil digging mechanism in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone, which China in principle objected to, and objected to loudly. In fact, even since 1988, I understand Chinese have been sending very quiet notes and did not make an issue out of it. They made an issue out of it. This is where the whole question of India came in. But the actual problem in the region is because of the assertion of these two major powerful centers that India got caught in. Now, India's position, as I think Rajiv has explained, is absolutely clear. The oil digging did not come up recently. It is an old story. India's relations with Vietnam are an old story, and if we think that this is a legitimate activity, we would protect it, even if the Chinese threaten it. Whether we can protect or not is a question I'll attend in a short while. But if you think these are your stakes, and as Rajiv has pointed out, besides these stakes, there are other stakes arising, and that is the rising trade on the eastern component of India's seaboard. I mean, investments in Sakhalin, we have to pass through South China Sea whether you like it or not. If India's trade with Japan has to grow, we have to go through the South China Sea whether you like it or not. So there are, and this is all growing. This is all good. If India's interest with China, India's trade with China grows, which it has grown tremendously, and I think would be 100 billion in about 2015 as it is listed, well, we are present there. The trade is coming. So there is no question of rising interests and stakes of India, and that's what Admiral Joshi said. Admiral Joshi did not, at no stage he said we are showing muscle in one way or the other. In fact, he was cautioned after his statement. Shankar Menon issued a statement saying, cautioning that this is to remove the misinterpretations. His simple assertion was, if our interests are affected, we will have to defend them. And whether we are capable of defending them, the question is, yes, we are preparing to be capable of defending. That's what the entire statement was, which raised, I think, unnecessary controversy about it. There's no question of Admiral Joshi saying that we will take you on in militarily or not. Now, when it comes to capabilities, the question is, the fact remains that India's naval capabilities are growing. Incidentally, even at 3% of the defense budget which Navy got, Indian Navy was the most powerful in Indian Ocean, in this part of the world. The Chinese Navy has only started coming up now. And even now, with all given statistics on the ground, Indian Navy still has a very clear edge over the Chinese. Now, Indian Navy is now getting enlisted, as I mentioned to you, from 3% to 22%. And there is a plan to develop Andaman and Nicobar Island by 2020. And I know that India has a huge problem of delivery deficit. That we plan something, we promise something, we cannot deliver on time. Imagine that Andaman and Nicobar is not developed by 2020, it is developed by 2030. But even when it is developed in 2030, it will have a huge reach to South China Sea. It would be sitting right on the mouth of South China Sea. Even now, one of the capability which he mentioned, BAZ, which is an air surveillance system in the Malacca Strait, has been developed, is quite worrying to anyone who thinks that India is absolutely not capable at all. Now, India's capability at this stage in terms of, I'm sure Dr. Chaudhary has followed the recent developments of the nuclear submarine and Vikrant, which has already been put on the sea trials, and it is expected that by the end of this year, Vikramaditya, which is being prepared by Russia, would be in the sea. Now that gives India two floating platforms which China doesn't have. China has Virat is being phased out. Virat is in a very weak state. In fact, it is to replace Virat that this is an effort. But we have a plan to develop the third one. Third one will still take time. So still at this moment, it is quite comparable with the Chinese capabilities, not at all comparable with the US capabilities. Therefore, you can sit down and count beans, but counting beans at times in the military matters is not as important as looking at the deterrent. Whether you can deter somebody from damaging you. Whether you have 5 against 5 or 7 against 7 is absolutely not important in the military counts. So much would depend upon how these capabilities develop or these capabilities do not develop. The question of freedom of navigation is very critical. Why it is that the US and India over and over again keep on repeating this phrase? They keep on repeating this phrase because freedom of navigation in the exclusive economic zone is not uninterrupted. But there have been statements coming from China where it is feared that China would decide whether you can pass through their extended economic zone freely or not. And that's why the US and international law. And third, associated with this is that China is not respecting the UN law of the sea of 1982. And that's where the whole dispute comes up in the South China Sea matter. So I think ASEAN is sitting down to settle with the Chinese as to what should be the code of conduct or how should they behave. Hopefully that gets resolved. If that gets resolved, it would not be a major problem of crisis. But if it doesn't get resolved, then it's a flashpoint in this region, and all the countries who have the capabilities and stakes would find their interest. The question of ASEAN, why ASEAN wants India? Well, partly economic reasons of ASEAN in notes, but as I mentioned to you, there is a certain unease about what China's assertions in the region are. And therefore, it's not only that they wanted India, many of the ASEAN countries have welcomed US reassertion. Your question was, why US has come? US was always there. The whole question was that when US started taking less of interest, most of these countries had, in fact, pulled in US back. That you can't afford to take less interest in this, and that would give rise to China's assertion and China's growth. There were all kind of explanations given to that. So it's not a new story that the US has asserted itself in Asia-Pacific region. US was always an Asia-Pacific power, and one of the most powerful one. So that's not a new question. There have been statements made at political level, not only at the level of admirals and others. In fact, Prime Minister of India is on record of having said that I cannot understand China's assertiveness. And that was immediately after the Chinese objections to India's digging oil in Vietnam. Now, whether the energy which is being dug there would really be useful, to what extent India would be able to pull it, I think one interpretation is, and why the ONGC had to do some double talk once they said, because they found that they cannot dig oil, they have to dig much more deeper, and that's what they thought it would need huge lot of investment. At that time, the Vietnamese president was on a visit to India, and he persuaded them that they would facilitate their further digging. So they, from the withdrawal statement, they came back and they said, okay, if these facilities are there, we would go on digging oil. But whatever oil is being dug, I wrote way back in 2005 that we have been digging oil. Whatever oil we have been digging is not suitable for Indian refineries. So what we are doing is we are selling it in the international market straight away. And it's not going to India to be refined and then used it. Therefore, it is not much in debate. And the quantum is not very high. Therefore, we do not know to what extent South China Sea would become an energy dependent source for India is a moot question. But when you are running short of things, you try and find it out wherever it is available and possible to you. And if it is available and possible to you conveniently, why not? What is wrong with digging oil in Vietnam? It is a dispute between China and Vietnam that this area does not belong to us. Whereas at a time when, if you look the same area into the international law perspective, it belongs to Vietnam. Therefore, there is no dispute in the mind of either Vietnam or India. It is a dispute in the mind of China, and China should resolve it with Vietnam rather than India getting worried about it. Tomorrow, if Vietnam says this is not our exclusive economic zone, we'll pack up and go. So it's not an Indian assertion or Indian dispute as it were. I think there are many other aspects of it which are related. So it's not a bargaining chip, it is a question of India's growing interest, India's territory as far as Nicobar Island, and India's economic investments in many of these countries, from Sakhalin to Vietnam to many other countries. If you come across in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, investments which are coming, that India has interest in this region. With Japan, India has interest in this region, and therefore bargaining or no bargaining. If it comes to bargaining, India will use it, every power will use it. Now the question, one last question of external powers' interest in South Asia, whether, I think your question. I mean, India has always been resistant to those external powers which do not suit India's strategic interests. And we have always welcomed those strategic powers which suit India's strategic interests. And India is not unique in this. Every other country this exactly this. I mean, China is now willing to have collaboration with Soviet Union, even in the region around. There was a time when China was not willing to have collaboration with Soviet Union. There was a time when China was not willing to have collaboration with the US. There is a time when China found it very suitable and profitable to have collaboration with the US. So it's not a unique Indian story, whether we like somebody in our neighborhood or not. We like somebody who supports us. We don't like somebody who does not support us. That's how there is consistency in foreign policy is a myth. And all those foreign policies which are being analyzed on the basis of consistency are doing injustice to the levels of analysis or to the country on which it is being applied. I think we must, at the end of it, thank Rajiv for generating some discussion. And this is an important and interesting area of investigation which will continue both with the policymakers as well as with the academics and strategic analysts. Thank you very much, Rajiv. We have a small token of gift for you from the ISAS, and please give him a hand.